Hello everyone, Kirsten here, and today I'm going to be showing you how I make art prints from my watercolor art. If you are like me and the thought of printing at home really overwhelms you and you'd like to outsource your printing, this is the video for you. Making art prints can be a very overwhelming process when you're first starting out, so I'm going to keep this video very basic, straightforward, and beginner friendly. Before we get into the process of getting your art ready for printing, I wanted to share with you a few things you'll need in order to get started. First and foremost, you will need paint and watercolor paper to create your artwork, and then once you have an artwork that you'd like to make a print from, you're ready to get started. One thing to keep in mind when you are selecting the artwork that you'd like to make a print from is what size your paper is. Paper size is really important when you're making an art print because we will be scanning the artwork. You want to make sure that the art is going to fit on the scanner bed. There are many different kinds of watercolor paper to choose from, and if you choose a paper that's too large, it's not going to fit into your scanner. I find for myself, even the paper that comes in your standard 9x12 block is too large for my scanner bed, so I always opt for buying a large sheet of watercolor paper, and then I just tear it down into whatever size I'd like for it to fit on the scanner bed. This is typically an 8x10, but you can do any size that you'd like in order for it to fit in your scanner. If your paper doesn't fit on your scanner bed, you will have to scan it in multiple sections and then try to stitch it together later on in the editing process, and I find that this can be very difficult to do. As you can see, this large sheet of 12x16 paper does not fit in the scanner bed and will result in sections of the artwork being cut out completely. Even this sheet of 9x12 paper is not laying flat in the scanner bed and is going to end up cutting off the edges of the paper, which could compromise the scan depending how close to the edges you've painted. So I recommend painting small scale, something that's going to fit in your scanner bed, and then we can always blow the image up later on in the editing process. I have done this numerous times in order to make larger art prints from a smaller artwork, and it does not compromise the quality as long as you have the scan settings right, which I will be showing you in this video. Doing it this way is much easier than starting big and trying to scale it down, in my opinion, so this is what I'll be showing you in this video. So first and foremost, make sure you have a paper that's going to fit into your scanner bed. The second thing you'll need is the scanner itself. I have an Epson Perfection B600 scanner, and I've had this scanner for over a year now and absolutely love it. It's super easy to use and the quality is really good, so if you don't already have a scanner, I would really recommend this one, but if you do have a scanner at home, go ahead and use it. You can use any type of scanner for creating art prints from. You might notice a little bit of a difference in a quality, but if you're just starting out, anything is fine. Once the art is scanned, we will need a computer and an editing software in order to edit our artwork. I use Adobe Photoshop to edit my artwork, but if you have another editing program like Procreate, you can use that as well. I find Adobe is kind of the universal program for editing artwork, so I will be using that in this video to show you how I edit my artwork, how I remove the background, and how I use it for sizing my art prints. Lastly, I will be using a printing company in this video to outsource my printing, so I will show you what file type I save in for the highest quality printing, what paper I print on, and I will also be showing you the entire process of ordering that print. And then when it comes back from the printer, I will show you what the print looks like compared to the original artwork so you can see that side-by-side comparison. If you have a printer that you can use at home to print on, feel free to do it this way. I just find for myself that outsourcing my printing is a lot more cost effective than buying a good printer, high quality paper, and ink. But that's just a personal preference. If you'd like to print at home, you can follow all the steps until we get to the printing part, and then you can use your printer at home. So without further ado, let's get into the video and I will show you how I make an art print from my watercolor art. So once you have the artwork you'd like to make a print from, we can start by scanning it. I always like to make sure that the scanner glass is clean before scanning by using a soft, dry washcloth. By wiping it down with a clean washcloth, it will reduce the amount of dust particles that could be laying on the scanner bed and therefore show up in your scan. I always place my art in the upper right corner of the scanner so I have it nice and squared off. A tip for when you're scanning is to press down on the top of the scanner. I find that with watercolor art, oftentimes the paper is buckled and it can cause some weird shadowing. Pressing down while the scanner does its thing will ensure that your art is laying flat and will make the editing process much easier. So once your artwork is on the scanner, you can go ahead and open up your scanning software. I'm using Epson Scan 2, which is compatible with the Epson V600 scanner, and I just have my scan settings saved under a profile called Kirsten. So if you want to go through and set your settings to match mine, and then you can select Save Current Settings so that you also have a profile and you don't have to fiddle around with changing settings every time you go to scan. So starting with the mode, you want to make sure you're in photo mode and not document mode. If you're in document mode, it will think you're scanning a document and it'll show up in black and white. So just make sure you have the photo mode selected. And then down into the document source, you want it to pull from the scanner glass, so I have this selected. And then the document type should be reflective. All these other ones are grayed out anyways, so just select the default reflective. And then coming down to the image type, again, we're on default 24-bit color. I'm not sure what these other options are. I always opt for the 24-bit color. And then in the resolution, we have 300 dpi. This is a pretty standard resolution, and it's what I personally scan all my artwork in order to get good quality prints. As I spoke about before, if you're going to blow your artwork up into a large print, you might want to go up to a higher resolution, such as 600, 1200. Just the higher you go, the bigger the file itself will be. So I don't think it would be necessary to go above 600 dpi. That's the largest DPI I've ever used to blow up really large art prints, but for now I'm just using 300 dpi as I'm creating a standard size. Then for the scanning quality, I'm using the standard scanning quality. I've never selected high, and I've always had my art prints turn out really well. Into the advanced settings, you can see that these are grayed out for our type of scan, and that I've left everything on default except for the dust removal. So it will default to off, but I always select this as high. This will just help with our image to not have as many dust particles if you have anything left over on the scanner glass from when you cleaned it. So I like to select high, and that will just reduce any of that. Coming back over to the main settings, we are going to go into color management, and I'm just showing you that I've done absolutely nothing here. I've left this all on default, and there's nothing you have to worry about in the color control. We will do that in the editing process later on. And then into the thumbnail options, the only thing I've changed here is the crop area size. It defaults to small, and I find that sometimes this cuts off my art when I'm scanning it. So I've changed this to large, and it will just help to ensure that the entire area is going to get scanned and that nothing will be cut off when you go to scan. For these other two options, I've left them on default, so I've just selected OK, and then you're pretty much good to go. I'm going to preview this scan. I did just forget to mention that the image format I'm using is TIFF. This is the highest quality image that you can get, so I opt for scanning in a TIFF over the JPEG and PNG. And then the file name, I'm not sure if you can change this, but I always just leave it on the default. And then I just make sure I have the folder selected that I want the scan to go to. So I have this saved in a folder called Art 2023, so I know where to look for it. So you can see that the scan turned out really nicely. It's captured everything. It's not cutting anything off, and you can zoom in on this. When you do zoom in, it's not showing the true quality of the scan itself. It's just showing you a quick preview of the scan, so don't worry if the resolution doesn't look that great. Once we hit scan and it gets saved into our folder, you can open it up and see that the quality will be much better. Once the scan is complete, it will pop open the folder that you have scanned to, and you can open this up straight away just to take a look at it and make sure it looks good. So as you can see, the quality is really great and everything looks good. The only thing that I notice when I'm looking at the scanned file is that you will see some of the markings from the background. This could be from the watercolor paper itself. This could also be things like pencil markings, any dust that we didn't remove off of the scanner bed, or in my case, I tend to have a lot of cat hairs in my painting. So you'll see all of this, but don't worry, we will be editing this out in Adobe Photoshop when we go to edit out the background. So now that the artwork is scanned, we are going to be moving over to Adobe Photoshop to do all of the editing that you will need to do in order to get your artwork ready for making art prints. So once you have Adobe Photoshop open, you can open the file that we just scanned by going to the scan location, and as I showed before, this is in my folder called Art 2023, and we will just open that image up. Now I'm going to skip through the next part of this video where I remove the background from the artwork completely and save this image as a PNG. I have a video on my YouTube channel called How to Digitize Your Artwork, where I walk you through step by step how to remove the background from your art as well as fixing any imperfections. That is the only part I'm skipping over here as it's super time consuming and a whole other tutorial in itself, so if you want to check that out, please do. Once you have the background removed and the art saved as a PNG, I will show you how to create different size prints using Photoshop. So now, as you can see, the background is removed and we have our PNG file that we can place on top of any size canvas we want to. So I'm going to start by making an 8x10 print, so just make sure you have it selected to inches, and I'll just type in 8x10. And then for the resolution, again, I'm using a standard 300. And I'm changing the color mode to CMYK, as this is the color mode that is best for printing, and then just hit create, and as you can see, we have our blank canvas. Now I'm grabbing the image layer from our PNG and I'm just dragging this over to the canvas and dropping it in, and then I'm hitting Ctrl T and I'm dragging this to be enlarged on the canvas. You can blow this up as big as you'd like to or as small as you'd like to, and you can move it around. Just make sure it's in a spot that you're happy with so that the print comes out the way you'd like it to. Once you have your artwork set to a spot you're happy with, you can just hit the check mark up top here and it will apply the transformation. Now, if you'd like to make another print in another size, you can just open a new canvas and do whatever size you'd like. I'm showing you how I would do a 16x20. I'm also making sure that I increase the resolution to 600. This canvas is double the size of what we just did, so I'm doing double the resolution and again selecting CMYK. So I'm grabbing the same PNG image and dragging it over. As you can see, it's a bit smaller to start with, but other than that, I'm completing the exact same steps. The only other thing that you could do in this case is if you did take two scans and you had scanned one in a higher resolution, I would use the higher resolution PNG file for the larger print. So now I have shown you the basic steps to create any size art print you'd like, but I'm going to finish the process using my 8x10. So I'm just coming back to the 8x10 canvas and I'm going to save this as a PDF. The Photoshop PDF is going to be the highest quality for printing, so I'm just renaming the file, and then in the format, I'm dropping down into the Photoshop PDF and saving that to send to the printer. So going into the folder where I've just saved my artwork, you can see that the file is here, and I'm just going to do one last review of the art to make sure I'm happy with it before I send it off to the printers. As you can see, by removing the background, all of the imperfections and pencil markings are gone, and we are left with this crisp white background, which is going to look really great as a print. I'm just taking one last look at the art and I'm zooming all the way out to make sure I like where I've placed the artwork on the page, and once we are happy with that, we are ready to send to the printers. I'm using a printing company called Little Rock Printing. This will probably be different for everyone depending what area you're in, but I would recommend utilizing a printing company that specializes in art prints. You can even get a free proof or pay for one print just to make sure the quality is good before committing to a company for printing. So coming into the art prints, I'm just selecting the size of the print, which is 8x10, and then I'm selecting the paper type. Paper is really important with printing, and I really like my artwork to be on high quality paper, so I'm choosing this 13-point uncoated cover that specifies that it's excellent for watercolor art specifically. Make sure to do your research on paper before ordering so that you're happy with the end result. Again, I like to outsource my printing as I find for myself it's more cost effective than getting set up at home with a good quality printer as well as having to purchase ink, but either way works to get the same final result. Once we have the art uploaded and ordered, we're good to go and I will show you the final product. So I have the original beside the 8x10 print here, and as you can see, the original is a bit lighter than the print. I honestly could have fixed this really easily with the saturation in the editing process to make the print look a bit more like the original, but I like the way that the colors pop a bit more with the way that the scan came through. You can see the side-by-side comparison here that the quality came through really nicely and that it looks nice and sharp and crisp on that white background from editing it out. So in addition to the 8x10 print, I also decided to do a 12x16 size, which came out really beautifully. I did decide to turn the artwork a bit on the canvas so that it filled up a bit more of the white space on the larger print, which I was really happy that I did. As I said before, starting small with the art and editing the prints to be larger works really well and doesn't compromise the quality at all. The 8x10 print was printed on the paper that I showed earlier, a thicker 13-point cover, but for the large print it's a poster style, so you can see that the paper is a bit more glossy and bends a bit easier, which I really like for my larger prints as I can roll them for shipping. I hope you enjoyed learning how I outsource making art prints from my watercolor art, and if you have any questions at all, please drop them in the comments below. As always, thanks for watching and I'll see you in my next video.